Good evening. I will call to order the Finance Committee meeting on December 13th, 2021 at 7 p.m. We have two items on the agenda this evening, proposed ordinance amendment, as well as a review of conditions number 6 and 7 of the City Council Order 19-100-7762B. I'll begin by starting with the first order, and I'll read the letter submitted by the mayor on order number 21-100-8449. Communication from Mayor Vigent together with proposed ordinance, City Code Chapter 608, Water Section 11, Entrance Fees, and Chapter 510 Sewer Section 4, Building sewer connections to increase both water and sewer entrance fees based on significant demand on the system. And I'll begin by reading the letter submitted by the mayor. Honorable President Ossing and councilors, enclosed for your review and approval is an amendment draft ordinance to Chapter 608, Section 11, and Chapter 510, Section 4, to adjust water entrance fees and building sewer connection fees based on significant demand on the water and sewer systems. As outlined in City Engineer Tom DePercio's memo, there is current trend towards biomanufacturing that will put a demand on our water and sewer systems. This proposed increase of fees will be held in the Water and Sewer Revolving Fund to be expended for future mitigation for necessary improvements, upgrades, and maintenance due to new customers. Commissioner Sean Duvall and City Engineer Tom DePercio will be available to answer any questions. Sincerely, Arthur G. Vigent, Mayor. And what I'll do is I will begin by asking the Commissioner and City Engineer to come up, please. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, City Engineer. If you could kind of give an outline on the reasoning of proposing this amendment change.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. So basically what we're trying to do with this change to the entrance fee ordinance is to bring what we see coming with these GMP buildings in terms of their demand on the system, bring the entrance fees for those buildings in line with our entrance fee structure that's set up now, especially with respect to multifamily housing, because what we're seeing based on some information we're getting from the developers of these buildings is that the demand, the water and sewer demand, is probably in line with multifamily housing in terms of per project or on, say, a per square foot basis, which is kind of what I tried to outline in my memo, which I know has caused some confusion. So the way our entrance fees are set up now, the existing ordinance has fees that are set up both for water and sewer connections that are based on the size of the connection pipe, basically. And for multifamily housing, there's an additional fee that's based on the number of units. Because that's typically that's the type of use that has the greatest demand on the system. And what we're trying to do with this change is to add an additional fee for this GMP use so that it's in line in terms of the entrance fees with the multifamily housing. So that's kind of the comparison that I tried to draw, and that's the rationale for the proposed change, is so that these new uses are going to pay fees in line with similar uses in terms of the demand.
Similar to multifamily.
Right,
Sorry.
right.
Okay.
So there's no change other than this type of use, to call it GMP buildings. There's no proposed changes to any other parts of the entrance fee code or any other uses. So there's no change to multifamily housing, entrance fees, or retail or anything like that.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. I'll open it up to committee members or Council Orem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom, if you can, on the, it's a good proposal. I'm glad to see it on our desks. The question I have is not just the entrance fee, but the strength of that sewage possibly coming, not the volume, because we know the volume you've addressed, but the strength. Maybe coming from industries or bio-manufacturers, which are industries. Are we compensated for any additional strength of that sewage that has to be treated or causes problems with our pipes and so forth? Are we looking at that as well when it comes to the demand from that type of sewage?
Yeah, so that's a good point. Industries that discharge greater than 5,000 gallons per day are required to get a permit to discharge from the city. And those permits, there's a lot of regulation in terms of those permits, and there's sampling requirements, so the strength of the discharge, as you note, that's monitored as part of the discharge permit that they have to get from the city.
So in all respects then, we're pretty much being compensated for any issues that strength may cause? They're not charged more though, right, for the water or sewer rate?
No, I don't, no, there's no change in the rate, no. There's fees for the discharge permit.
Yeah. Oh, okay, and then...
But it's monitored. We're required to monitor those types of users.
And we're compensated for that monitoring, and they're required to pre-treat, I presume, if they're...
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
I just want to make sure that was part of the formula. Maybe down the road, as we see additional discharges from biomanufacturers or industry that causes issues to our systems, especially the sewer side of it, we may have to look at that as well, because if it is being caused by even pre-treated discharges, then we have to maybe go back to that. But I commend you for what you've done here. This is well overdue, and thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions? Oh, Councilor Doucette. Yep, thank you.
Thank you very much. You guys should be commended for the work you guys have done putting this together. It's more or less a framework that these industries can look at the city and know we can engage them and understand what their impact is within our community, because we're still a small city, and 5,000 gallons per day is a big chunk. So I think it's a fair limit to be set, and then work with a different level, different as far as engaging with them. So I think this is excellent that you put this in place, and I think this was a great incentive for businesses to move into the city. Thank you.
Councilor Perlman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just building off of that, I'm curious if there are other models in other communities that are similar, where there is an equivalency of what the discharge would be, and then being compensated as such.
There is, yep, and we did a lot of that kind of survey of surrounding communities. There's a wide range of entrance fees and other types of fees that new requests to connect to the system pay. So this puts us in the range of the surrounding communities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Perlman. Councilor Roby?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I just want to make sure there's the or in a lot of these sentences. The very first number one, where you're talking about the water entrance fees. Is the fee of $1, additional fee of $1 per square foot for both the expected flow of greater than 5,000 and for buildings designed as GMP buildings?
Let's see. So your question would be if there's a GMP building that is proposed to have less than 5,000 gallons?
Well, that's what, I guess that's kind of another question. How does a developer or a proposal of a building know how much they're going to use? I mean, I guess you probably have some idea based on the size of the building, but I know we've heard in multiple conversations at the site plan that GMP buildings don't have any idea how much water and sewer they're going to use, and they're all saying it's less than a typical manufacturing building. So to me, you've got two things, the entrance fee for anybody greater than 5,000, plus any, regardless of how much they're going to use, GMP buildings. Is that
Yep.
correct?
That's correct, and the assumption is that a GMP building is certainly gonna discharge more than 5,000 gallons per day. The intent was that the 5,000 gallons is the threshold for the fee.
So if they don't, they will not be assessed the fee? That really is anybody who
Right.
going
so-
in says, I'm not going to use 5,000, wouldn't get this fee. But it must, how long does it take for you to know what the,
As soon as they start using, you know, it's per day flow, so it's theoretically day one, we would know what the per day flow is.
okay, and there's no thought that GMP buildings' flow would change on a day-to-day basis?
It certainly could, yeah, correct.
Okay. And then that same thing is true for the $3,000 connection fee, it's for both of them?
So that part of the ordinance that's existing already, that's not one of the proposed changes.
Okay.
So that fee is paid by any new connection of commercial or industrial.
You're just changing the language to add that last sentence, so they know
That's
it's
right.
that fee plus the new fee. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Roby. Councilor Navin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Engineer. So, you know, just following up on Councilor Roby's point, so if to run a check on the numbers for each of these businesses, right? So is there going to be an average daily flow, and will that be kind of confirmed over a number of days? If, right, so if like day one, if they're ramping up and it's, you know, 2,500 gallons, and then on, you know, it averages out over the first month, is there going to be a time frame in which we look at that for the average day?
So that part of it, I don't know if you were gonna.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we've thought that through exactly. My experience is with larger manufacturers, going back to the 5,000 gallons per day, typically these businesses know if they're going to be over or under 5,000.
Yep.
They may not know exactly what the flow is going to be, but they should have a sense if they're going to be over or under 5,000 gallons per day. And this used to be part of the permitting we'd have to go through with DEP for larger users. That's fallen by the wayside. It's now on cities and towns to look after. So, you know, I think we'd want to look at it on an average daily basis probably going forward, but we need some amount of time, if there is some question on whether or not they hit the threshold,
Sure.
to see what their actual usage will be.
I appreciate that. And one of the reasons I asked is because, you know, first of all, I am supportive of this. I think it's a great idea. You know, at, you know, other entities, including the one I work at during the day, you know, we have entrance fees for communities that come in and for large users that come in, and that's based on the amount of gallons that they use. And the whole point of having the entrance fee is because, you know, someone who is new to the table is coming in and getting the benefit of, you know, investments that have been made in the infrastructure over, you know, the past some odd years. And so it's, you know, what's fair is fair. And so if we're gonna have new businesses come in, we're gonna use a lot of water, and we're gonna use our 2 upgraded sewer facilities, you know, then we should be able to do that. I wonder if there is a way to base that on usage as opposed to a threshold of 5,000 gallons. Because if we have, you know, industry coming into the city that's using a tremendous amount of water, you know, tying it to another industry who may just trip over the threshold, I'm not sure that, you know, for getting the benefit of our system is, you know, as if we are getting an equitable share of that. So I wonder if it's something, if we don't consider now, if we can consider in the future to make sure that, you know, people are paying their fair share, you know, for the use of our tremendous infrastructure. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and again, the intent of this was to kind of get the entrance fee part of it in line so that it was kind of equitable when you compare this use to what an equivalent use is in terms of demand, which is the multifamily. I think a separate conversation from that is maybe a per gallon fee that some towns do for I&I specifically.
Okay.
So that's something we've talked about also.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Navin. Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I read this and kind of interpreted it to be almost like a fee that would happen with the bill. So that, you know, because these types of operations tend to run 24/7. You don't shut them down because you're busy. You know, that's the nature of the beast, is that they run 24/7. So the output of 5,000 gallons per day would be something that would average out over a month, because they're gonna be pretty consistent in their water use. So if the bill came back and it said it was exceeding more than 5,000 gallons a day, I would see a charge, and that's how I interpret it at this point. So I think more if it's a billing issue, not as much of a regulatory issue, okay? Oh, they're using more than 5,000 gallons a day on average for the month. Done, you know? So I think that would be an easier way to approach this than try to come in through a regulatory framework.
Yeah, I think this is a fee that is now, when entrance fees are paid, it's paid typically before construction starts or at the start of construction.
So it's a one-time fee.
It's a one-time fee, it's a cost to connect to the system.
So then the fee's paid whenever the first time they exceed that.
Right, and I think if someone's developing a GMP building, they're marketing it to manufacturing companies that are gonna wanna know that they can use the building to its potential. I'd be surprised if any of them say that it's gonna be less than 5,000 gallons per day.
Sure.
I think when they're building a GMP building, the tenants that they're seeking are ones that wanna have the ability to discharge more than that, so.
Right,
I think
tens of
it's
thousands
that,
of
it's
gallons?
really, that's the type of use. I don't think the 5,000 gallons is gonna, I don't think we're gonna get into a place where either a GMP developer is gonna say we're gonna be less than that, or there's another type of user that's gonna be near that threshold where we have to then wait for, actual usage to look at it. So, I think we've got it to a point where it's gonna work to what we intended to.
And this coincides with them pulling building permits and going forth like that, forward, okay.
Correct.
Council Orm.
Thank you, and on the lighter side, we're playing acronym soup out here tonight. I&I, inflow and filtration,
Yes.
GMP, good manufacturing practices, just so the general audience, if they're listening, are probably saying, what are they talking about? But again, I applaud the first step. I think as councilors have noted, there'll be some other steps down the road, is the strength, the amount, and so forth. With that, Mr. Chair, I motion to approve.
I will second that. Any further discussion? All in favor? Councilor
Sorry,
Rowe?
I guess I will ask a similar question to what was asked at the last committee meeting. This still needs to be advertised, and it needs a public hearing. So all you're doing, no, it does
Not
not?
public hearing, but,
Okay,
because my
needs to be
goal,
advertised.
yeah,
All
my
right.
goal, Council, was if it's approved, to report it out on the next December 20th City Council meeting and ask for a suspension to advertise.
Okay,
And thank you for the reminder.
thank
I
you.
appreciate that. Motion's been made and seconded to approve order number 21-100-8449, proposed ordinance to City Code Chapter 608, Water, Section 11, Entrance Fees, and Chapters 510, Sewer, Section 4, Building Sewer Connections, to increase both water and sewer entrance fees based on significant demand on the system. All in favor? Any opposed? It carries 5-0. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, City Engineer. I appreciate all your help. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda this evening. Next item is order number 21-100-8468, that the Finance Committee review condition number 6 and number 7 in order number 19-100-7762B, Green District Housing, to determine the fund where the payments shall be deposited. This information shall be forwarded to the mayor and the auditor to establish the account and submit transfers from the FY 2022 undesignated account into the account designated by the city council. And we all did receive the background on this from the city council approval and the special permit with the orders, conditions 6 and 7. And I will open this up to the committee members for some input. Or President Ossing.
Yeah, so I'm not on the finance committee, but so just, so background for the council. So as part of the green project at Cimarano and Cedar Hill, they're putting up 475 apartments in 2 phases. First phase, 235 units, second phase, 240. As part of that special permit, there were 2 conditions allocating funds to the city, which we received the phase 1 portion, which is about 1.4 million. But each one of those conditions, 6 and 7, as you see in the background information, requires the city council to designate where we want the funds to go.
Correct.
Now, some of the newer councils weren't there, but I believe the councils that were there, the intent was to have this fund the fire station. I mean, but we can have it go anywhere we want, because it says funds designated by the city council. So the request of the order is to have the finance committee determine where would you like the funds to go, all right? And then the request would then be to go send it up to the mayor and the auditor, to have the auditor set up the account, set up the fund, which would be a stabilization account that takes 8 votes to get in and 8 votes to get out, and the mayor would send down a transfer from the free cash at a future meeting based on what the wishes of the council are. So I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess the question is, would we be using an established account, or would we determine and establish a new account? Or is that up to the committee?
Well, again, the special permit said the city council will decide, so we get to decide what we want to do with the money. Where do we want it to go? I mean, we can basically send it at the wishes of the committee, so you have the opportunity to decide where you want. I would look to the Ward 3 councilor, since it's in his ward, what his thoughts are, but I believe the intent when, at that time, Chair Delano was chairing Urban Affairs, and the Urban Affairs Committee at the time, was to use these funds to start putting a account together to pay for the fire station that has yet to be decided on or bonded. So this would be the first, I would call it, this is $1.4 million less of a bond we would have to pay.
Absolutely.
If that's what the you guys, Finance Committee, you guys decide. Council will then vote, but if you want it to go somewhere else, that's the decision we have.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for that information. I appreciate that. Anyone on the committee first, or?
I think everyone's looking at me, so I'll just.
Oh, no, I didn't want to, I just want, before I went to Council Doucette.
I'm fine with it, calling it the West Side Fire Station, but that's obviously open for discussion.
I will go to Council Doucette.
So we're just talking about naming where it goes at this point, right? It's gonna, to go to the fund for the West Side's fire station.
It doesn't have to go to the fire station, it can go anywhere.
Are we talking about just naming the fund? Is that what we're doing tonight?
No.
Mr. Chair, so it's 2 parts. So again, the order says account designated by the council. So hopefully the outcome of the finance committee is we want the money to go to account X. We would then send the order up to the mayor and say, dear Mr. Mayor, Madam Auditor, please create account X and return it with a transfer from free cash, because the money's sitting there. We've got $1.4 million sitting there to then go to that account designated by the council. So the finance committee's job is, where do you want the money to go? Pick whatever account you can do it. You can do nothing. You just leave it in free cash and spend it. But the intent was, and this is why I would ask Councilor Dumas and the councils that voted on that special permit for the Green District, go back and think where you think you thought that money was going to go and make that recommendations. For the new councilors, cash grab. You can go do whatever you want. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Roby, thank you.
Thank you. I guess as one of the counselors that wrote up this order, I know I'd had multiple conversations with Mr. President, and it was after I found out that we had actually received this money, received it without knowing that we got it, which meant that it did get rolled over into free cash. So we should have done this a long time ago. I debated whether to make the recommendation specific to what I think it should go to, which is the West Side Fire Station, and instead let it be open for this body, the Finance Committee, to make a decision. So I'm hoping that you will follow. It was a suggestion, it was not a motion by the ward counselor, but I think we had pretty significant discussion as we discussed this project, and I think the fire station was where we were all going.
I remember that was the, at the urban meetings, I believe that was the intent. Thank you, Councilor Roy. Councilor Perman.
Thank you, and I was not at that particular meeting, obviously, but I do support it going towards the West Side Fire Station. I think it's important to have the funds available to make this possible, and so this is obviously a first step in ensuring that it does happen in a timely manner. And I appreciate Councilor Roby mentioning why we're receiving this now, because I was curious why the timeline. So it makes sense that it, you know, we hadn't been notified previously. Is it typical that we would, once something is set aside like that, and then it would have, like, what would be a typical window in which that would have been allocated to a fund?
Thank you, Councilman.
Mr. Chair,
President
so I was notified in February of last year, just before COVID hit, and kind of lost track of it. Councilor Roby reminded me, I did track it, so I knew we had it out there. Phase 2, and that comes on later this year, or in 2022 for their building permit. That'll be another $1.4 million to be going to a fund designated by the council. And that's why it's key. We've got to decide where we want it to go. And then once we decide where we want it to go, the mayor, the auditor will set up the account, the mayor will send down the transfer.
Okay, and just to clarify, so it'd be 2 sets of 1.4, is that what you just said?
Well, we only have one right now.
Right, but if eventually
Second
there would
one's-
be a second one? Okay, and does it say specifically those have to go to the same fund? I just want to clarify from the language of the special permit.
No.
Okay, I just was curious.
This is a fund designated, well, it kind of implies, if you read both conditions, it kind of implies
That's
if
what I
you
was
set up
thinking.
the fund, it's gonna go to that particular line item, that's why. Again, the intent was, we knew we had a fire station coming, we were building items in Ward 3, and saying, okay, somewhere on the west side of the city's gotta have a fire station, you know, let's see if it's any mitigation, can that help to offset the cost of that fire station?
Okay, thank you for the context.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Tenera.
This is just for conversation. Wouldn't it be prudent to put that money towards something that's going on, like the library, or to pay down the expense of a loan, something like that? Just a question.
I'm happy to answer if you're asking me.
Yeah, well,
Well, one thing, we did get funds for the library from the state funds. And I know that when we originally was going through this process with Urban Affairs, that was the intent, to create an account for the West End Fire Station. That's my thinking.
so if this isn't happening for another 2 years, then we're just building up this fund, the money's just sitting there. So my thought is, well, why don't we just pay for something with this money? And we're gonna be getting funds after that, right? Money's gonna keep rolling in from these projects?
If you want me to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Ray,
But me to answer, I'm gonna be the cynical guy who says, when you approve a project, money will roll in, nothing's been approved yet, so you
And
can't say
also, you mentioned, Mr. President, that you need 8 votes in and 8 votes out to take the money
Well,
out.
if you're putting it into the stabilization account, which is what you'd be
So we
setting
would-
up, I checked with the auditor on that, and she said that that's correct,
So if we had a change of heart or we needed funds for something, we could actually vote on taking funds out.
Once it goes into stabilization, again, we're the appropriating authority. We can change it, as long as you have the proper votes, you can change it to whatever you want. But again, I go back to the intent.
Yep.
The intent was for a fire station. Now, if we don't want to do that, and want to pay it for a library, you can do that, but I'm willing to bet the folks that voted on that, and there may be a ward council that may not be extremely excited about what that might be.
Thank you, Mr. President.
No, that's fine, it was a conversation.
Council Orman.
Based on the discussion, past intent, based on the fact that, you know, this has already been previewed with the previous discussion with Urban Affairs, I would motion that this funding be forwarded to an account labeled West Side Fire Station, and that would be my motion.
On the west side fire station.
Oh, West Fire Station, West Side, whichever works.
What works, west side or west end?
How about just new fire station? New, with no specificity of where it is.
New?
New, I mean, we,
With the, Council Orman?
I think that's reasonable. We can put for new fire station.
New fire station.
Yeah,
I personally would like to see west side.
Oh,
fire
see,
station.
now that's why I said
Or
west
new
side.
west side. The point of this was because of the location of this project was so far out of the quadrant of the response times. It was purposely for a west side fire station.
And that is
I'll
the
stand
word
with my
councilor.
I'll stand with my initial motion to say West Side Fire Station.
West side.
I just don't want to go on the east side. So I mean, as long as it goes on the west side. And, yeah.
West side fire station. Thank you, Camille, okay. Motion's been made and seconded to approve order number 21-100-8468, the Finance Committee review condition number 6, and number 7 in order number 19-100-7762B, Green District Housing, to determine the fund where payment shall be deposited. This information shall be forwarded to the mayor and auditor to establish the account and submit transfers from the FY 2022 undesignated account into the account designated West Side Fire Station by the City Council. Any further discussion? Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want clarification on a couple of things based upon what's been proposed. First is, this is the first payment, right, $1.2 million. We will be getting a second payment at some point when they start phase 2, right?
Oh, Mr. President.
Just for point of information, so the way it's written is when they apply for the building permit.
Yep.
That's when they would then be writing those checks, so.
Right.
Until they, they're clearing site 2 with the
Right.
anticipation of in the 2022 sometime.
Right.
At that point, then the next.
The next round of payment would come in at that point. And the third, also just for clarification, is that there is no payment that has been set up for the campus development. So we do not have the equivalent of this for the campus development. That's also true. This is not a condition for the campus that has this.
Haven't approved the campus.
I know, no. Yeah, in the wording that's currently in front of the committee, there is nothing here to do something like this.
That's right.
And that might be something worthwhile to consider when it comes to the committee at a future meeting, so.
if I could just respond,
Councilor Rhodes.
Mr. Chair, that I believe we actually made the language for the campus. We had removed the language where it could be used for affordable housing. The solicitor put it back in because technically that's in the code language, but we made the rest of it vague enough that, again, we are to create a fund or designate a fund. The language is that as the developer will notify the council that the payment has been made. So we will know when that payment happens. And
Are you talking about the campus, or are you talking about this development?
the campus. The other ones have been vague, so that it's when we receive it. Sometimes we find out, sometimes we don't find out. So the language for the campus is specific that the developer will let the council know when the payment is made, and at that point, we can either roll the money into this West Side Fire Station or into another one. We have a downtown economic development account already set up. We could designate an additional account, but we can have
No, I
that
got no-
discussion. I would rather leave it vague at this point than
Understood. Okay.
when we get there.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette. Councilor Landers?
Yeah, I think, I always felt, getting back to where the money's going, I always felt strongly that it would be for the fire station. So I think by approving this, Mr. Chairman, now, or on the 20th, I think it tells the city council that we're ready to move on the fire station. But more importantly, it tells the people of Marlborough that we're ready to move on this fire station. You know, there was a lot of talk, chatter during the election, you know, are we ever gonna get that fire station? Are we ever gonna do that? I think this is a very important step. And on the 20th, when we do finally vote that, and then I think that will get us moving on, get going on that fire station. It's needed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Landers. Any further discussion? Motion has been made and second to approve. All in favor? It carries 5-0. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion has been made to adjourn. I will second that. All in favor? It carries. We are adjourned at 7:36 PM.